Hey everybody! So continuing through the list of teams with our season previews, it's now time to do the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers had a very poor season last year. The train basically fell off the tracks last season, and they were an older team. They were a team that consistently was a playoff team up until last year, and everything kind of fell apart. They fell off the cliff. They started moving older players in big contracts, and they've accepted the fact, which is a real smart move on their part, rather than trying to be in denial and keep an older roster and try and get even more out of that roster, more than you'll ever actually get. They immediately realized that they're in need of a rebuild. They've accepted that. They've changed coaches. They've gotten rid of some bigger contracts and older players, and they're working on bringing in new blood and new young talent into the Rangers organization. And look for that to continue again this season. I don't expect much from the Rangers this year. I think they're going to be one of the lower teams in the East. But I think they are aware of that, and they're building for the future at this point in New York. So here's what Roster Resource has as the Rangers lineup. Not nearly as bad as Ottawa, who I just did, and I think Ottawa is clearly the worst team in the NHL at this point. The Rangers, not a great lineup, but not nearly that bad. They still have some good players here, and it's going to be interesting to see where they finish this year. I don't think they're really much of a threat to be a playoff team, but they might not be as bad as people think. Also depends on if they move any more of these older, bigger name players for draft picks or prospects. But as it stands right now, Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, and Matt Zuccarello. Top line, Ryan Spooner, Vlad Namestnikov, and Pavel Buchnevich. Second line, Jimmy Vesey, Kevin Hayes, and Jesper Fast. Third line, and then Howden, Anderson, and Cheetil as your fourth line. On the back end, Brady Shea, Kevin Shattenkirk, Mark Stahl, Tony DeAngelo, John Gilmore, and Neil Pionk. Henrik Lundqvist in net, like always with New York. And the backup is this Georgiev kid, or Gorgiev. I don't know exactly how you say that. But apparently he's a pretty good goaltending prospect. So we'll see how he turns out. Extra players, you have Boo Nieves, Cody McLeod for games when you need toughness in the lineup, and your seventh defenseman is Steve Kampfer. That's at least for right now. Let's not forget they also have Brendan Smith, who got waived last year on defense. He with a new coaching staff in there, he might get a second chance with this team. Obviously, Alain Vigneault didn't like him too much and waived him last year. But with David Quinn in there now as the coach, this could be a really important preseason for Brendan Smith. If he plays well, then he might end up getting a spot in this on this defense, maybe either as the seventh defenseman or in the top six even. So obviously not a lot of expectations for the Rangers going into this year. But they do have some pretty good pieces. I mean, they have good talent with Chris Kreider, Zibanejad, and Zuccarello as the top line. I really like Zibanejad. I think he can be a really good player in this league. Zuccarello is a guy who could end up getting moved, as is Chris Kreider. Those are guys that have been around the league now for a little bit. Zuccarello is older than Kreider by a decent amount, but those are guys who can score. They're well-respected players. They're good players. They're players that teams are going to want at least around the trade deadline, if not before. So I would not be surprised to see Kreider or Zuccarello or both traded at some point this season. Ryan Spooner, it's going to be interesting to see what he does. He racked up a lot of points after getting traded to the Rangers at the deadline last year, but that was a really bad team that was well out of the playoffs and weren't really playing for anything. So you could sometimes it's a little easier to rack up points on those teams when you're playing big minutes, more in a role that you're not normally playing, and it's going to be interesting to see what he does this year. Nemesnikov, I think he is a really good young player in New York, coming over from Tampa Bay. I think he's a guy that they can build around. Buchnevich I like a lot. VC is what he is. He's not the elite goal scorer that I think a lot of people thought he was going to be when he came out of college. I see him as around a 20-goal guy every year, and that's about it. I don't ever see him developing anymore into being, like a 30, 35-goal guy. He's a 20-goal guy. So good on your third line. He's a good third liner. Hayes and Fast, they've been in New York for a while now, and then this kind of makeshift fourth line here. I wouldn't be surprised to see McLeod get a decent number of games just based on his toughness. And when you're playing teams that play physically and have an edge, they're going to need Cody McLeod in the lineup. On the back end, Shattenkirk's back after missing pretty much all of last year. So it'll be interesting to see what they look like with him. I love Brady Shea. He is absolutely the piece on defense that this team is building around. Shea and Shattenkirk are actually a pretty good top pair there. Stahl, he's getting older, and he's not the player he was 7-8 years ago. Gilmore and Pionk are both kind of borderline NHL guys, and then D'Angelo's a young defenseman trying to make a name for himself. So, I mean, it's not a great lineup, and in that division, that's a very good metropolitan division. It's going to be hard for this team to finish anything higher than 7th or 8th, but it's not awful either, and there are definitely some pieces here to work with to rebuild around and plan on having for the future. Guys like Zibanejad, Nemesnikov, and Shea really stick out as those guys. Also, Anderson and Cheetil are young prospects trying to become full-time NHLers. This season is going to be a difficult one for the New York Rangers. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I do think that if they rebuild correctly, their future is bright. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do end up finishing like this year and what they look like this season. And we'll get a much better grasp of just how far off they are during this year. But I still think they're at least 2 or 3 years away from putting a high-level playoff Stanley Cup team on the ice again. And that's if they draft well and do really well with trades or free agency. So a long way to go in this rebuilding process, but they understand that it's a rebuilding process. They're planning on it being a rebuilding process, and that's the step one. Is you got to realize that your glory days or your cup days and your window is closed. All of those are behind you, and you do need a rebuild. And the Rangers seem to be on board with knowing that they need a rebuild. So we'll see how it goes. This year is going to be a tough year, I think. But not an awful lineup, but certainly nothing that's going to contend for a playoff spot, I don't think. So that's what I've got on the New York Rangers. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description below. Comment, what do you guys think? Let me know what you think about the Rangers in the comment section down below. Am I too low on them, or are they going to finish right around 7th or 8th in the Metro this year? That's where I think they will. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. The more subscribers, and I've gotten a few more the last couple days, so that's great. The more subscribers and the more views, the better. And thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Talk to you guys soon.